What we do here is go back.
No matter where you are in the city of Pittsburgh, you are steps away from experiencing a work of art. Public art is a distinguishing part of our home. It is freely accessible and enables people to experience art in their daily life outside of museums or other cultural institutions. It reflects our history and our evolving culture. It helps to give our communities a stronger sense of identity and place. Public art matters, and public art matters to the city of Pittsburgh. Welcome back to Pittsburgh Public Art. I'm Liz Barentine, and we're here today with Morton Brown, the city's public art manager. And today we're discussing the cube tension sculpture that's located in Bull Community Park. Can you tell us the story behind this sculpture?
Yeah, it was commissioned by the city of Pittsburgh in the late 60s, 1969. It was designed and fabricated by a local architect slash artist named Sylvester Damianos, or Sil Damianos, who's still around here in Pittsburgh. It was sort of a piece of its time. The minimalist abstract sculpture was very popular at that time. We have a lot of that type and period of sculpture in the city's collection. But this one was really special to me, and I think to a lot of people who commissioned it, because it sort of was placed in a fashion to signal that there is no longer a road going through the middle of Allegheny Center. So if you can picture East Ohio Street used to bisect Allegheny Center, right in front of the Children's Museum and on the back side of Allegheny Center Mall. This sculpture was placed there to sort of help signify the fact that it's a campus and no longer a road. So this presented a lot of challenges to the designer and to the commissioning agent, but the designer really pulled it off well. It once, when it was first installed, had a rectangular reflecting pool underneath it, and it sat on stilts, so it sort of floated or hovered above this sunken reflecting pool. Over time, the water feature just fell in disrepair. Was not ever cost effective to repair it, so the city filled it in with mulch, but it sort of still kind of retained a little bit of that floating nature. It was painted blue at one time. It's supposed to be red, as it is today. We have recently restored it. It had a lot of pock marks over the years, some recent graffiti, but the city, I worked with Sil recently to fully restore it back to its red color, and now that it's red and not blue, it's no longer invisible. It does go back to its original intent, being bright red, and signify that plaza, that it's public use and not a driveway. You can see it from the edges of the circle. If you're driving around the circle, if you're coming in from the Ridge Avenue side, from the Park side, or if you're coming from the other direction on East Ohio Street, you can see straight through the center and you see this red cube sculpture. And now it makes a lot more sense in that space.
That's great. I'm really happy to hear that it's been restored to its original color, because it's a very eye-catching piece. So now we're going to meet with Sil Damianos, the sculpture artist who created this piece, to learn more about his take. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really nice to meet you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Can you tell us a bit about your artwork and about the cube tension piece?
I can. I got into art, first of all, I have to tell you that because I was not trained as an artist. I was trained as an architect. But my wife is a painter, and when I was in the Army, I decided I needed to do something with my spare time. So my wife became my teacher, and I got involved painting. We had met in a ceramics class, throwing pots actually, at Carnegie Tech back then, Carnegie Mellon now. And I painted. We came back to Pittsburgh in 1960, went into the first Three Rivers Arts Festival, and then decided that even though I continued to paint for a while, as an architect, I was really more excited about doing dimensional pieces. And I also loved, well, mathematics, shapes, and spaces. And as an architect, space means a lot for me. So this whole plaza was being designed in the 60s, and I was invited to submit a proposal for a piece of sculpture here. And I was lucky because I didn't have much of a background, much of a record, but I was invited. And my first piece was rejected simply because it was too big and too costly. And you may say, how in the world could I make a transition from this to the cube tension? If you look at it closely, you'll see that the spatial features of the piece are, to me, the most important part. This is architecture. Space is architecture. And so I have employed space, but in a different manner, with cube tension.
Interesting.
So, because when you look at this from all sides, you see different slots and you see different openings and so forth. Mathematically, this is it's a prism, a rectangular prism. And if you can imagine that prism long, you start bending it, bending it around on itself, that's what it is.
Okay.
And so you see it starts here, bends around, and it forms a cube. So taking one mathematical shape and creating another one from it, to me, is pretty exciting because the spaces are really what counts. And I was taught in school that space in almost anything that you look at can become art if you want it to. And so I continued on that vein, and so this was the first major piece.
Wow, that's great. And where did the material come from?
It's aluminum. It was fabricated in Pittsburgh, and I had to build a model for it first. In fact, I had to build full-size templates for it, but it was fabricated here in Pittsburgh.
And how did the city help you feature the piece?
Well, I mean, they were interested, they were trying to take advantage of the fact that there were a lot of pretty decent artists living in the city of Pittsburgh, and they were helping to promote their growth, and they have, because right now Pittsburgh is, I think, pretty well endowed with some very good artists. And they were very good about it, and I was surprised. I mean, I had, as I said, I had no history or no previous record of involvement like this, and so I was excited by the prospect. And then 3 years later, when I had a chance to help redesign this building here, the library, I mean, and to feature it here with this piece of sculpture was pretty incredible. Back when the photograph was taken that's in the catalog that's available now, though, these trees weren't here, so you could see this piece in context with the library.
So at one time, the library needed to be redesigned?
It was to be torn down. The city tried to avoid tearing it down, but they needed to prove that it could be renovated within the budget. And again, my office was only 3 years old at that time, and they asked if we could do it. And of course, you say, yes, I could do it. And so we saved the building.
That's great. It's a beautiful building.
And just like the Children's Museum was also destined to be torn down, and we're pleased that both buildings were saved.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about the meaning of the piece or its story?
Well, you have to recognize that this was done at the time when minimal art was really, a big thing. Today, people look at it and probably say, yeah, my kids can do that, but it was at a time when minimal art was being produced nationally and internationally. And I always had a sort of a personal challenge to prove that it can be done with simplicity and craftsmanship.
This piece of art definitely brings a lot of life to this area, so thank you so much for telling its story, and it was really nice to meet you.
It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
If you'd like to learn more about public art in the city, you can visit pittsburghpa.gov. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Pittsburgh Public Art.